Welcome to the Wandering Dotterel. When I was a little kid, my dad worked for a strip mine, one of the largest in the world, and he operated a drag line, which I got to ride on. It was the most amazing giant Tonka toy I've ever seen. They would strip the earth all the way down to shale and then finally coal, but they had to go through layers and layers of bedrock. And I used my dad one day for show and tell at school, and all the kids were amazed at how he ran a giant tractor that could dig miles into the earth. Being a young girl and a runaway, I loved to dig in the trash. Back in the day, you could find anything. You could find money, food, clothes, jewelry even that you could take to the pawn shop and get money for. Huh? It was actually free picking because people threw away everything. But at one point, a family member had called the police on me, and I ended up in an orphanage that had been built in the 1800s. And believe me you when I say it, this place was haunted. And because I was the only one that wanted the job, I chose laundry detail, which was in the basement near the boiler room. And everyone was horrified, but I didn't understand why. They were like, she was gullible. She'll do it. She'll figure it out. And I ended up running away from that facility because it was creepy. It was scary. It was haunted. And I found out why when I was earning my $2.01 allowance to wash everybody's clothes in the basement. I met a guy once at Circle K. Circle K was a 7-Eleven type store back in the day where you could get soda fountain drinks or beef jerky or anything you wanted. But anyway, this guy came in the store and he was missing his bottom jaw.
Uh-oh.
And he could still communicate. And so I asked him, "What the heck happened to you, man?" He said, "Don't ever try to commit suicide. What I did was I grabbed the gun and tried to shoot myself in the face."
Oh, no.
And he shot half of his face off.
Uh-oh.
He said he was the most miserable man alive. But he thanked God that he lived because he was thankful to be alive, even though he looked like a living monster. This is your host, the Dingy Dotterel. Being a runaway as a teenager and hitchhiking across the country, I learned that you need to pick and choose who you speak to or who you talk to wisely. You don't just hop in the car with anyone. But wandering around in the desert, I found myself at the top of a bluff, sitting on an area that looked quite peculiar. And when I started looking around, I realized I was sitting on top of a missile silo that if we were to go to war anytime soon, the ground would open up and a missile would come out. It was actually a restricted area. We weren't always vulnerable kids, but there were times when we did some really stupid things. Like the time my parents took us and left us up on their mountain property, which they did regularly, but this time in particular, things got out of hand. The kids that were up there were acting out, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to take a swim. And we were in a mountainous area where there were bears and moose and deer, and it was just dangerous. Snakes and all sorts of things that kids could get hurt with, especially when they're unattended and underage. So me and my sibling decided I would be the one to jump in. I jumped into the pond and I swam straight into the beaver hut. Huh? And unbeknownst to me, my sibling tried to reach me by jumping on top of the beaver hut.
Uh-oh.
And got cut by the woven branches and the beaver germs. I tell you what, beaver fever is no fun. But at the time, I thought it was so cool because I was face to face with live beavers and they were chattering and carrying on. And they didn't bite me or scratch me or anything, but my sibling got really sick.
Uh-oh.
When I was small, we used to visit my stepmom's farm. And I thought, this is the day that the Lord gave me a hammer and I'm gonna smash those bees. So I pursued the bees, started to smash them with the hammer, and the chicken coop I was in was old and abandoned. And I didn't know that the swarm of bumblebees had made a huge nest where I was pounding. And the harder I pounded, the more I got stung. The more I got stung, the sicker I got. And the more I screamed, everyone laughed at me. Everyone thought it was hilarious. I sure didn't, though. If you think my stories are unique, share the content. Running away was a regular thing I started to do when I was a kid. Sometimes I found myself in precarious situations, like the time I tried to find my mom, and I didn't know her address. I knew her location, and I was a lanky, skinny, gawky-looking teenage girl, and I was a moving target, and a lot of people stopped me and asked me what I was doing. But I found myself in the mountains, reaching her house, and the first thing she said to me was, "What do you want? How did you get here?" When you're a teenager, you don't think about the consequences of firearms.
Uh-oh.
And the individual I was hanging out with said, "Let's go hang out with so-and-so." It ended up being a strange situation. I had never met any of these people. And the next thing you know, someone is waving a gun in the air, and another person slides a gun across a bed and shoots me in the back. My life was full of tragedy when I was a kid. My parents divorced when I was young. My siblings were much older than me, and everyone picked on me. I was kind of like the guinea pig for everybody. I got bullied at school, and I didn't have a lot of friends because my stepmom cut all my hair off and I looked like a boy. Huh? So I was like this punk little girl. It'll be forever burnt into my mind the year that Adam Walsh, John Walsh, son, the founder of America's Most Wanted, the spokesman, when Adam went missing. I was in the mountains visiting my mom because I was supposed to visit her on partial custody, and she had bought me a new pair of jeans. Anyway, I spilt gasoline on my jeans, and I thought I should probably clean them so she wouldn't find out and get angry at me. And I threw them in the bathtub and accidentally poured bleach all over them. And then I realized I was bleaching my pants and that she would be even more angry. And so I proceeded to take my jeans and throw them into the Eagle River, which is in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. And I remembered Adam Walsh, and I wondered if anyone had thought about him and that I was thinking about him, and they found him later that year. Welcome to the Wandering Dotterel.